It was the spring of 2006. I was meeting with a couple in my office here in Omaha. You'll understand why I won't use their real names. Let's call them Ed and Martha. They'd just sold their family farm after 40 years, netting a tidy sum. They were looking to retire to a warmer climate, and they were utterly enchanted by the idea of a forever home in the Sunshine State. They showed me glossy brochures, told me about the beaches and the golf courses. It all sounded wonderful. The problem was, they were focused entirely on the dream and not on the brutal math or the very real risks. I tried to talk to them about property taxes, about insurance costs that were already climbing, and about the simple fact that they were buying at the absolute peak of a historic bubble. They were polite, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was just an old Nebraskan who didn't understand the new world. They bought the house. By 2008, their home's value had plummeted by nearly 40%. Their property taxes didn't fall with the value, though. And their insurance premiums? They doubled. What was supposed to be their peaceful retirement became a decade-long financial anchor. They eventually had to sell at a massive loss and move back to a small apartment in Lincoln, their golden years shadowed by a decision made on hope, not on homework. People sometimes ask me why a 71-year-old man from Omaha, Nebraska would bother doing this, talking into a camera from his study. The reason is the story I just told you. I've seen versions of that story play out my entire life. I've seen it with farmers here in Nebraska, with tech millionaires in California during the dot-com bubble, and I've read about it happening to families in Seoul, where over-leveraged buyers were crushed by rate hikes, and in Tokyo, where asset bubbles left a generation with zombie balance sheets. The names and places change, but the mistakes don't. I'm retired now. I've made my money. My one job left is to give you the roadmap, the playbook that I spent a lifetime learning, so you don't have to learn it the hard way. My name is George Whitman, and today we're going to begin a deep dive into a very specific, very urgent question for anyone thinking of buying a home in 2026. Do not buy a house in these 5 states in 2026. This isn't about fear-mongering. It's about cold, hard reality. It's about understanding that a home is not just a place to live. It's the single largest financial asset most of us will ever own. And it can just as easily become a crushing liability if you get the location wrong. In this masterclass, we'll move beyond the glossy real estate ads and the feverish online chatter. We'll look at the brutal math of property taxes, insurance, and market fundamentals. We'll confront the psychological traps that make us ignore these red flags. And we'll build an escape plan, a clear, practical framework for making a decision that will serve you and your family for decades to come. All right, let's get down to brass tacks. In my office, back when we still used ticker tape and green ledger books, we had a phrase for what I'm about to lay out for you. We called it the all-in cost of ownership. Most folks, especially today, think of a home purchase in terms of the mortgage payment. They see a Zillow listing, plug the number into a calculator, and if that monthly payment fits their budget, they're ready to sign on the dotted line. That's a recipe for disaster. The mortgage is just the tip of the iceberg. The real beast, the one that sinks retirements and drains bank accounts for decades, is what's lurking underneath. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, and the long-term trajectory of those costs. These aren't one-time fees. They are a permanent, ongoing, and often escalating expense that you are contractually obligated to pay every single year for as long as you own that property. Let's name this beast state by state, because its form is terrifyingly different depending on where you are. In some places, it's a slow, grinding burden. In others, it's a sudden, catastrophic bite. We'll start with property taxes. This is the largest and most predictable of the silent killers. In 2026, you cannot, under any circumstances, ignore this. New Jersey, once again, sits at the top of the heap with an effective property tax rate of 2.23%, the highest in the nation. That means for every $100,000 of your home's value, you're paying over $2,200 a year in taxes. I've seen friends in Trenton paying property tax bills north of $15,000 a year on a home that's worth less than it was a decade ago. This isn't just a number on a bill. It's money that cannot be used for your retirement, for your children's college, or for an emergency. Right behind New Jersey is Illinois. And its story is particularly grim because it's not just about local schools or city services. Illinois is being crushed under the weight of over $100 billion in unfunded state pension debt. Where do you think they're going to find that money? From you. From your property tax bill. Experts have warned that this debt will continue to drive property taxes higher for the foreseeable future, making long-term home ownership in many parts of the state a financial millstone. Then there's California. Ah, California. Its story is a paradox. Thanks to Proposition 13, a long-time owner might have a miraculously low tax bill. But for you, the new buyer in 2026, you get the full, brutal reassessment. The moment you buy that house in Los Angeles or San Diego, your property tax is reset to 1% of the purchase price, and it will climb from there. The benefit of Prop 13 is a gift for the incumbent, not for the newcomer. It creates a two-tiered system that locks people in and punishes new residents with a steep, immediate tax burden. Now let's talk about the other head of this beast, homeowners insurance. This is where the story turns from a slow grind to a potential cliff dive. In Florida, for example, this has been a full-blown crisis for years. As of 2025, it's consistently ranked as one of the most expensive states for home insurance, with average annual premiums soaring to over $5,000, and in some projections, even as high as $15,000. Why? A perfect storm of climate risk, a broken legal system that encouraged insurance fraud, and a mass exodus of national insurers from the market. While there are hopeful signs of reform and new carriers entering the market for 2026, the legacy of this crisis means premiums will remain painfully high, and coverage can be hard to secure. The problem isn't isolated to Florida. Texas is another state where the insurance costs are becoming a major factor. It's one of the most expensive states for home insurance in the nation, with average annual premiums of nearly $4,600. Couple that with a property tax rate that's already well above the national average, sitting around 1.58%, and you've got a double whammy that a simple mortgage calculator will never, ever show you. In my 40 years, I've seen more financial plans derailed by ignoring these two simple line items than by any stock market crash. Your home is not just a roof over your head. It's a financial liability with a long, long tail. You must know the true, all-in cost before you ever make an offer. All right, let's stop talking in generalities. Let's put real numbers on the table. I've always believed that a story makes you feel, but math makes you act. So let's build a financial model, a 30-year projection for a hypothetical homebuyer in one of these dangerous states. We'll use Florida as our case study, but the principles apply with terrifying clarity to the others. Imagine you're looking at a modest $400,000 home in a popular Florida retirement area in 2026. The mortgage calculators online will tell you your principal and interest payment on a 30-year, 6% loan is about $2,400 a month. That feels manageable, doesn't it? You might even think, I can handle that. Now let's add the beast. For property taxes, Florida's average effective rate is around 0.83%. On a $400,000 home, that's $3,320 a year, or about $277 a month. That's just the start. Local assessments and CDD fees in many Florida communities can easily add hundreds or even thousands more to that annual bill. Now for insurance. Let's be optimistic and use a conservative estimate of $6,000 a year, or $500 a month. This is after recent reforms, but it's still more than double the national average. So your real monthly housing cost isn't $2,400. It's $2,400 plus $277 plus $500, $3,177. That's a 32% increase over what you thought you could afford. But the math gets far worse when you look at the long view. The 30-year devastation. Let's assume, for simplicity, that property taxes and insurance rise at a modest 3% per year, which is historically a conservative estimate given the pressures in these states. Year 1 total cost, taxes plus insurance, $9,320. Year 10 total cost, $12,460, a 34% increase. Year 20 total cost, $16,660, a 79% increase. Year 30 total cost, $22,280, a 139% increase. Now, let's add it all up. Over 30 years, your cumulative cost for just property taxes and insurance on this one home would be over $410,000. Let that sink in. You will have paid more than the entire purchase price of the home, again, just to keep the government and the insurance company happy. This is money that is gone forever. It builds no equity. It earns no return. Now, let's compare this to a more stable state. Let's say you buy a similar $400,000 home in, for example, Ohio. Ohio's effective property tax rate is about 1.43%, which is higher than Florida's. But its insurance costs are a fraction of the price, around $1,500 a year. Year 1 total cost, taxes plus insurance, $7,220. Cumulative 30-year cost, approximately $320,000. That's a difference of $90,000 over the life of your ownership. That's a fully funded retirement for many people. That's your kid's entire college education. That's the difference between a comfortable retirement and a stressful one. This isn't theoretical. I saw this exact math play out with Ed and Martha. Their beautiful Florida home had a $450,000 mortgage. Their annual property taxes and insurance started at around $11,000 a year. By 2012, that number had climbed to over $17,000, even as their home's value had dropped to $270,000. They were being bled dry by a home that was worth less than what they owed on it. This is the brutal, unfeeling math of real estate. Your emotions, your dreams of sunshine and beaches, are just that, emotions. The tax collector and the insurance adjuster don't care about your dreams. They will send their bill, on time, every year, without fail. And if you can't pay, you will lose everything. Now that you've seen the math, the stark, terrifying reality of what a home in these states can truly cost, you might be wondering, why on earth would anyone ever do this? The answer isn't found in spreadsheets or market reports. It's found right here, between your ears. Your brain is your own worst enemy in a real estate transaction. It's been that way for as long as I've been in this business, and I guarantee it was that way long before I was born. I want to tell you about a young couple I met in the late 90s, just before the dot-com bubble burst. They were engineers in Silicon Valley, making good money, and they were convinced they had to buy a house now or be priced out forever. The fear of missing out, what we now call FOMO, was so intense it was a physical thing you could feel in the room. They bought a modest 2-bedroom in Palo Alto for what was then an insane price. They ignored the property tax bill. They ignored the fact that their monthly payment was nearly half their take-home pay. All they saw was the line on the graph going up, up, up. They believed they were being smart, but they were just being scared. This same fear is what drove buyers into the teeth of the 2021-2022 housing frenzy. And it's this same fear that's being stoked right now in 2026 by headlines and social media. Prices are starting to rise again. Get in before it's too late. That's not advice. That's a psychological trigger designed to bypass your rational mind. But there's another, even more insidious trap. The sunk cost fallacy. This is the emotional logic that says, I've already put so much into this, I can't walk away now. I saw this with Ed and Martha every single time I spoke to them after 2008. They'd say, but George, we've already lost $150,000. If we sell now, that money is gone for good. What they couldn't see, what their brains wouldn't let them see, was that the $150,000 was already gone. It was a sunk cost. The only question that mattered was, is this home a good financial decision for my future from this day forward? But their emotional investment had become so great that they were trapped. They couldn't cut their losses because it would feel like admitting a personal failure. This isn't just an American problem, a product of our home ownership at all costs culture. I've read study after study from Japan about the asset price bubble of the late 80s. In Tokyo, corporate salarymen were taking out 100-year mortgages on apartments they believed would only go up in value. The cultural pressure to own, to have a permanent address for your family registry, was just as powerful as our own emotional drivers. The result? A lost decade that turned into a lost generation of wealth. In South Korea, the same story is playing out today in Seoul. Young couples are taking on massive debt to buy into overpriced apartments in the Gangnam district, driven by a potent mix of social status anxiety and a belief that real estate is the only safe asset. They are ignoring the brutal math of their debt-to-income ratios because the psychological need to have their own place is overwhelming. Your brain is wired for survival, not for complex financial decisions. It seeks safety in the herd, FOMO. It hates to admit a mistake, sunk cost fallacy. And it is terrible at weighing long-term abstract costs, like a $300 per month tax bill in 2040, against an immediate, tangible emotional reward, the feel of your new front door key in your hand. The prison is built of your own hopes, fears, and social pressures. The key to escape is simple, but it's not easy. You have to create a decision-making firewall. You must divorce the emotional act of buying a home from the financial act of making a long-term investment. You must force yourself to look only at the all-in cost, the long-term math, and your cold, hard, personal financial goals. Do not let a real estate agent's enthusiasm, a neighbor's advice, or a TikTok trend make this decision for you. All right, enough with the problems. It's time for a solution. After a lifetime of watching good people get trapped, I've developed a simple, 3-step framework for evaluating a home purchase. This isn't some complex algorithm. It's a practical, back-of-the-envelope checklist that forces you to confront the reality before you sign anything. I call it the George Whitman home buying triad. You must pass all 3 tests to give a home your serious consideration. Test 1. The 4% all-in cost rule. This is your first and most important filter. Before you fall in love with a house, you must calculate its all-in annual cost of ownership. Add together the annual property tax and the annual homeowner's insurance premium. Now, divide that total by the purchase price of the home. If the result is greater than 4%, you walk away. Do not pass go. Do not schedule another viewing. Let's apply this to our states. Florida, $6,000 insurance plus $3,320 taxes equals $9,320 on a $400,000 home. $9,320 by $400,000 equals 2.33%. This passes the 4% rule on its face, which is why so many people are fooled. But Florida is the exception that proves the rule, as we'll see in Test 2. New Jersey. A $400,000 home with a 2.23% tax rate has $8,920 in taxes. Add a modest $1,500 for insurance, and you have $10,420. $10,420 to buy $400,000 equals 2.61%. Again, under 4%. Illinois. A $300,000 home in a high-tax area might have $8,000 in taxes and $1,200 in insurance. That's $9,200 to buy $300,000 equals 3.07%. So why am I warning you away from these states if they pass the 4% rule? Because the 4% rule is just the entry ticket. It's Test 2 that will save you. Test 2. The future-proofing test. This is where you look beyond the numbers on the page and into the future. You must ask two critical, non-negotiable questions. 1. Is the state's financial house in order? Are they running massive deficits? Are they buried under unfunded pension liabilities, like Illinois? If the answer is yes, your property taxes are not a fixed cost. They are a ticking time bomb. A state that is broke will find a way to get money from its most reliable source, its property owners. You are not just buying a home, you are buying a front-row seat to a fiscal train wreck. 2. Is the insurance market stable and competitive? This is the Florida test. Even if the current premium seems manageable, is it being offered by a strong national carrier with a long track record? Or is it from a brand new, thinly capitalized company that might disappear in the next hurricane season? Talk to a local, independent insurance broker. Not the one your realtor recommends, the one your neighbor uses. Ask them, if a Category 3 storm hits tomorrow, will this policy still be here in 5 years? If they hesitate, you have your answer. Test 3. The personal resilience test. This is the most personal, and often the most ignored. You must be brutally honest with yourself. Ask, can my financial plan absorb a 50% increase in my annual housing costs over the next 10 years without derailing my retirement or my children's future? This isn't about what your budget looks like today. It's about stress testing your future. If you're on a fixed income in retirement, a 50% jump in costs could be catastrophic. If you're a young family, it could mean giving up on other critical financial goals. I've structured this triad so that a home in a high-risk state must pass a much higher bar. Florida, for instance, might pass Test 1, but it will almost certainly fail a rigorous application of Test 2 and Test 3. New Jersey and Illinois might pass Test 1, but their long-term fiscal instability means they fail Test 2. Now, let's be clear about the 5 states I am telling you to avoid in 2026. 1. Illinois. For its crushing, debt-driven property tax trajectory. 2. New Jersey. For its nation-leading property tax burden with little relief in sight. 3. California. For its punitive property tax treatment of new buyers combined with an extreme cost of living that amplifies every financial mistake. 4. Florida. For its extreme and volatile insurance market, which creates an unquantifiable long-term risk. 5. Texas. For its dangerous combination of high property taxes and some of the highest home insurance premiums in the country, driven by hail and windstorm risk. This doesn't mean you can never live in these places. It just means that in 2026, the financial risks of full, leveraged homeownership in these states are simply too high for the average American family. Renting, or buying in a more fiscally stable part of the country, is the wiser, more resilient choice. So, let's bring this home. We started with the story of Ed and Martha, a couple whose dream of a Florida retirement home became a financial nightmare because they ignored the all-in cost of ownership. We named the beast, the crushing, ongoing burden of property taxes and volatile insurance premiums that most buyers overlook. We laid bare the brutal math, showing how these hidden costs can steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from your future over a 30-year mortgage. We explored the psychological prison, the FOMO, the sunk cost fallacy, that makes our brains ignore this math, a trap that has ensnared families from Omaha to Osaka for generations. And finally, we built our escape plan, the three-step triad. The 4% all-in cost rule, the future-proofing test, and the personal resilience test. A simple, powerful framework to cut through the noise and make a decision based on reality, not on emotion. The 5 states I've warned you about, Illinois, New Jersey, California, Florida, and Texas, are not inherently bad places to live. They are beautiful, vibrant parts of our country. But in 2026, the financial structure of home ownership in these states is tilted against you, the buyer. The risks are too concentrated, the long-term costs too uncertain, and the potential for regret too high. My job, as I said at the start, is not to tell you what to do, but to make sure you see the whole board before you make your move. I've spent a lifetime learning these lessons, sometimes the hard way, and I have no financial stake in your decision. My retirement is secure. My only interest is in seeing you build and protect your family's wealth for generations to come. So, as you look at homes in the new year, remember the triad. Run the numbers, ask the hard questions, and most importantly, be honest with yourself about your own financial resilience. A house is more than an asset. It's a 30-year promise to yourself and your family. Make sure it's a promise you can keep. My name is George Whitman. I'm talking to you from my study in Omaha, Nebraska. And I'll see you in the next lesson.